It's Friday, August 7, 2020. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I am in Southwest Harbor, Maine, aboard my 1936 wooden powerboat, Tortuga. And I thought that what I'd do today is give you a brief tour of the boat. There's not much to it, but show you what there is and talk a little bit about what I've done to the boat in the 13 years since I acquired it. So let's start taking a little bit of a look around. Okay, I am now right up at the bridge deck looking aft in the main cabin, and you can see the seating back there and the table on the starboard side. I have a matching table, but it's not installed yet because I just varnished it this year, and my wife doesn't like the smell of varnish, so she doesn't want me to have it in the cabin until it's had about a year to cure out. That table folds down and latches to keep it out of the way if you want more space up here. For example, if you wanted to do a little ballroom dancing. Now this cabin is very simple. It doesn't have much in the way of seating, just the seats on the aft end that are built in, and we have two chairs that you can sit at, but that's all we need. Another thing I should point out about this particular cabin house, and that is that it's all glass. There are, I believe, 17 windows in this cabin, and 9 of them open. So there's plenty of ventilation, even though it's completely enclosed. And that makes this a very nice sort of living room when we're anchored out someplace. Okay, let's take a look at the other end of the upper cabin. Right over here on the port side is the helm, and I think the wheel is original to the boat, but the rest of that is not. The main part of the helm was built in 1995 when the cabin was rebuilt by a previous owner. And on the right hand side of the helm console, where the single lever control for the engine is located, the mahogany that's mounted on was added by me because there wasn't room for the single lever control inside the body of the main helm. And we've got the bridge deck, spans the width of the helm. The center window there opens, the outer 2 windows are fixed, and I've been toying with making that center window fixed because unfortunately when the wind is blowing straight onto the bow and it's raining, that window does leak a little bit, which is kind of annoying. And on the right hand side, starboard side of the bridge deck, is the companionway down to the lower cabin. Okay, that's pretty much all there is up here in terms of accommodations. There is one other important part, which I'll show you right now. Now, the other important thing is the engine. When I bought the boat, there was a platform that extended back to here, and the engine was underneath that, and the gear for the engine was behind it. I replaced that with what you see now by building this panel here, which lifts up to reveal the engine. When I bought the boat, it had a 1948 vintage Chrysler Crown Flathead 6 gasoline engine in it. I don't like gasoline, and that engine was seized from having been sitting for about 5 years. So I pulled that engine out and dropped in this little Volvo Penta D240 40 horsepower diesel engine. And that is the power. This engine is enough to push this boat up to about 9.5 knots at wide open throttle. And it'll cruise all day at 7 knots at about 2,000 RPMs, burning just over half a gallon an hour. Or we usually cruise at about 1,600 RPMs, which is 5.5 knots on a quart of fuel an hour. And I did the install of the engine after I completely rebuilt the engine compartment. You might have noticed the insulation inside the engine compartment. That's sound down. There's 2 inches of that. And when the engine is running at wide open throttle, you can carry on a normal conversation up here in the main cabin. Now, let's go below into the lower cabin. Now, the lower cabin is divided into 3 parts. At the aft end of the cabin, we have the galley. There's a sink over here on the port side, and that is a refrigerated cooler with a compressor in it, and it acts as our refrigerator. It's very low power consumption, and it does the job quite handily. Here we have a little cabinet up above, and underneath that cutting board is a 2-burner Origo alcohol stove. This is not a pressurized alcohol stove, so it is quite safe, and it works very well, and we don't have to have propane. Underneath is the water heater, and that's also where my fuel filters are. The boat has 2 Raycor 500 MA fuel filters, and there are valves so that I can run fuel from either of the 2 fuel tanks to either of the fuel filters, and I can also select which tank the return is going to, so I can use the system to transfer fuel from one tank to the other. And I should say now, since I'm talking about tanks, that the boat has 2 20-gallon plastic diesel tanks. I put those 2 plastic tanks in at the last minute when I discovered that the 2 80-gallon aluminum tanks that were in the boat leaked. To starboard in the lower cabin, we have a sort of stand-up desk. That's a solid maple countertop that I built, and it has drawers underneath. And I ultimately want to put a swing-out seat in here, but I haven't found one that I thought was reasonable. Thought they were kind of ridiculously expensive. Now, the cabin here has 4 ports on each side, 3 on each side in this part of the cabin, and there are 2 more forward in the forward part of the cabin. Now, just forward of the galley area are the settees. There are 2 settees. They have storage underneath. They're fully lined. And up there is a hanging locker. And you can also see at the forward end of the boat, in the forepeak, is the head. There's a Wilcox Crittenden head up there. It's an old one. It came with the boat. I think it's original from 1936. It's a Wilcox Crittenden skipper. And that goes up to a holding tank, which is behind the head. And there's also set up to pump over the side if you're outside the 3-mile limit. On the other side of the boat, just before you go into the head, is another storage cabinet which has shelves in it. And my wife has it completely full of stuff. And behind that cabinet in the head, there is a porcelain sink. And to port, we have another settee. Under this settee is the water tank. There's a 26-gallon bladder tank under there, and the water pump is under the aft end of that settee, so it's very easy to access for winterizing. Okay, that pretty much sums up Tortuga. She's pretty simple. Not a lot of fancy stuff on board, but it's a nice little boat, particularly for day cruising, and it's comfortable enough to go for an overnight. Well, here's the bow-on view from the port side. As you can see, Tortuga is a raised deck cruiser. It has an almost plumb bow, just a little bit of curvature. 4 bronze opening ports in the lower cabin, and then the upper cabin. The boat is 32 feet 9 inches long, not counting the anchor roller, and it is framed with white oak and planked with clear vertical grain Douglas fir. The main cabin is mahogany on a Douglas fir framework, and with the exception of the mast, which is Douglas fir, all of the exterior wood is varnished mahogany. The cowl vent you can see there is just a vent for an engine blower, which is a carryover from when the boat was gas powered, but we use it to dump heat from the engine compartment when we're underway. A little hard to see, but Tortuga has a varnished mahogany transom. All of the decks have been fiberglassed. They were originally Alaskan yellow cedar, but over the years that was in very poor condition and it leaked like a sieve. I fiberglassed the aft and side decks, and whoever owned the boat before me fiberglassed the forward deck. And the cabin top is also fiberglassed. It has a layer of tongue and groove Douglas fir that's painted white, and then a layer of plywood, and then fiberglass over that, so it is completely waterproof. The name boards I don't believe are original, but I believe the running lights are original, and they work very nicely. They are bronze running lights. The only concessions to modernity on this boat are the electronics. There's a VHF radio. There's a fish finder, which doubles as a depth sounder up there. And the electrical system is built to modern standards. And I have an electric anchor windlass with a control here. And these are the engine controls, which of course go with the modern 4-cylinder diesel engine. Other than that, the boat doesn't have any installed electronics. In this box is the compass, and I do have a chart plotter that I use with the boat, but it is not permanently installed. Okay, that sums up Tortuga. I'll just do a pan around looking forward, and you can see that with all the windows up here in this cabin, there's lots of great visibility. Matter of fact, 360-degree visibility from up here. And there are lots of opening windows so we can get good ventilation and keep it comfortable up here when we're underway. And when we're anchored out at night, underneath the settee back there is a Webasto forced air diesel fired heater that does a very nice job of heating the boat up. Okay, that pretty much summarizes my 1936 wooden powerboat Tortuga, and tells you a little bit about the boat. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell.